Okay, today we're going to start a new chapter, and now we're going to start on the chapter of inflation. We're going to try to understand inflation. Remember, there are three macroeconomic goals. One is create full employment. The second one is deal with price stability, and the next one is with economic growth. So we already learned everything about full employment. We already discussed the classifications of unemployment and the impacts of unemployment in the economy and also on the human lives. And today we're going to try to understand what is inflation and the impact of inflation in the economy, okay? So let me go ahead and share my screen. And I go right here and we begin our class, okay? So today we're going to try to understand inflation. So the question is, what is inflation? What is inflation? Right, for many individuals, you know, if I was to ask them, if I was to ask you, what is inflation? I mean, you will gonna give me a very simple definition. Will be something like this, you know, inflation is when the price of items go up. And the answer that you gave me is actually right. Inflation is nothing more than an increase in prices. But on this chapter, we're going to go in depth and we're going to try to understand how do we measure inflation? Why inflation a socioeconomic problem? What do we mean by establishing price stability? And then the next thing is what causes inflation? Why does inflation take place? Okay, so let's go with the definition of inflation. Okay, inflation is nothing more than an average increase in price. That's it. And this is a very core problem. In other words, this is a very serious problem that we try to control. So let me skip this and let me go right here. So inflation, again, is an increase in the average level of prices, not a change in any specific price of goods. In other words, if the price of apples goes up, that's not inflation. If the price of gasoline goes up, that's not inflation. If the price of air travel goes up, that's not inflation. In other words, it's possible that in an economy, relative prices, and when the price of certain things go up and the price of certain items come down, you know, but that's not inflation. For example, it is possible that the price of an item goes up simply because people really like that product. They are buying it a lot. Think about, for example, the price of gasoline in the last 8 weeks. The price of gasoline in the last 8 weeks have decreased, you know, by about 50%, or even more than 50%. Right? Now, why did the price of gasoline go up? I mean, went down. Well, it went down simply because people were not buying that. That's it. So then inflation is an increase in the average price of all goods and services. So when we experience an inflation, it's possible that some prices of certain items are coming down, right? But we still have inflation because on the average, the price of everything is going up. Okay, so that's what inflation is. It's a rise in the average price level, on the average price level, and that's classified inflation. Now, if the average prices decreases, then we have the opposite, and that's deflation. And that's, for example, what we're experiencing today. In this quarter, the price of most items in the United States is actually coming down. We are beginning to experience a little bit of a deflation. Prices are coming down, almost the price of everything. I mean, if you want to buy a car and you have the money, this is the time to buy a car. You know, this coming memorial holidays, this is the time in which you will buy a car because the automobile companies are desperately trying to get rid of the 2020, I don't even know what year we are. 2020, right? That's where we are. Yeah, on the 2020 cars, because the 21 models are starting to produce, I think it's next month. But they still have millions of cars in the lots that they need to get rid of it. So that's a deflation. Deflation is that on the average, the price of things actually come down. By the way, guys, just like we fear inflation, deflation is just as worse. Not as worse, but just as bad at inflation. If you were to choose between inflation and deflation, many people say, oh, I'll prefer deflation, prices to come down. Well, you as a consumer, think about this, you as a consumer are always going to be better if you can pay less for the items that you buy. But what we buy or what we pay for a product, to me, is the price. But to the seller, that's his revenue. So then if prices are coming down, we consumers are better off, but the producers are worse off because the revenue is decreasing. And if the revenues of the producers are decreasing, then the producers are going to decrease production simply because they're not making enough money, or the price do not cover the cost of raw materials, or the price is not enough for them to be profitable. So then when deflation begins to take place, this is what happened. Producers say, I have an inventory of items, but I'm not going to sell it because I'm not making any money. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to stop producing. And you stop producing, and then we have unemployment. Then we have unemployment, then we have no income. Then we have no income, we have no consumption. And if we have no consumption, then that put even more pressure on companies to let go of people. And that's what happened during the Great Depression of the 1930s. You know, companies were lowering the prices. They used to think that if we lower the prices, people are going to buy more. But that did not happen. People were so afraid in the 1930s that prices continued to go down, 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 and down, and consumers were not buying. So it got to the point in which most companies closed down because they had no buyers. In some cases, some companies were selling the products at production costs. And even then, consumers were not buying. And if you know the history of how we were able to get out of that depression in the 1930s, the government intervened, and the government was the one that created, you know, a phantom demand. Or in other words, the government created demand by the government begin to buy. The government begin to hire people, give them income, and then people begin to actually buy. So many people believe that the only solution of what we have now, it has been discussed this morning by some of the best economists in the world, that the only solution that we have now at this point, especially with, you know, all this big unemployment, is for the government to begin massive infrastructure projects. In other words, for the government to begin to go into projects of building highways and bridges and, you know, buildings, you know, not only at the federal level, but also at the state level and also at the local level. You know, for the states to borrow money so they can build highways and bridges and turnarounds, you know, just project to create dams, create, you know, highways, right? And by doing that, we hire people, people have income, and people are going to consume. The problem that we have is that at this point, we believe that hiring people to work together in big projects can create, you know, a situation in which people are going to get sick. I mean, you follow the news. I mean, Ford, for example, Ford opened the plant 2 days ago. I don't remember, was it in Michigan, I believe? Yeah, in Michigan, they opened an assembly plant 2 days ago. They opened it on Wednesday, and they closed it yesterday on Thursday. 24 hours after they opened the plant. Why? Because they opened the plant, and in 24 hours, they were an infection in the plant. I think there were like 32 people that actually got sick, or they were able to prove that they have the coronavirus, which they did not have it before they came into the plant. So they closed the plant. So now they do not know when they're going to open it. And that's the problem, you know, about using the solution of putting people to work. Okay, so then when we have inflation, it's possible that we have changes in relative prices. And I already told you what relative prices are. It's simply a change in the price of one product compared to the price of another product. It's possible that the price of gasoline is going down and the price of sales service is going up. That's just changes in relative prices. Is the price of one good compared to the price of other good.
I have one question about inflation real quick, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
So this is, I sort of don't know exactly how to articulate it, but when we're talking about deflation, you said that's generally a negative thing, and I can understand why. When prices go down, you know, producers don't make as much revenue and it's sort of a collapse. But to what extent is inflation tied to the actual value of the dollar itself? Because I would think of deflation as if prices are going down, that means that the value, the economic value, utility of a US dollar would be actually rising. Okay. So to what extent is it buying power versus sort of the amount of legal tender in an economy and like what the actual worth of that legal tender is? Because I would usually think of inflation as bad because it's sort of diluting the market and negatively affecting the value, economic value of a dollar, whereas deflation would be, well, I could see how that'd be negative. I'd often think that would just mean that the value of the dollar would be rising.
See, the question that you're asking is actually a very complex question because I can give you different responses based on different parts of that question. But let me give you a broader answer, and then I'll try to focus into what you're asking. The value of the dollar is not determined by gold. We don't have a gold standard. We don't have nothing to back it up. The value of the dollar or all the currencies of the world are fiat money, which simply means the value is determined by the fate of the individuals. It's fiat money, it's token money, it's worthless. So the dollar has value because we believe that somebody else is going to accept it as a form of payment. So then the appreciation or depreciation of a currency is simply determined by how much people want to hold that currency, or they're afraid of that currency. The dollar is very strong. The dollar is very strong because many people all over the world want dollars. Now, why do they want dollars? Because a dollar, you use that to buy American products, right? And we know that America is the most powerful nation in the world that produces 25% of the output. So that currency, the dollar, is always going to be able to be used as a form of exchange. Somebody's going to accept it as a form of payments. In addition to that, all the planet, all the countries of the world, they use the dollar as the price of commodities. In other words, in Saudi Arabia, they sell oil. In Saudi Arabia wants to get paid in dollars. In Colombia, they sell coffee and they want to get paid in dollars. In Chile, they sell copper and they want to get paid in dollars. In Venezuela, they sell bananas and they want to get paid in dollars. So all the countries, all the commodities of the world, all the commodities, without no exceptions, they all price in dollars. So now think about this. Even a country, let's say like Mexico, if Mexico wants to buy copper from Chile, Chile is not going to accept Mexican pesos. As a matter of fact, they don't even want Chilean pesos. So then Mexico has to go into the foreign exchange market and buy dollars, exchange pesos for dollars. Then they use dollars to be able to buy the copper in Chile. So that's why the United States is very, very, very powerful, okay? So now, when inflation is taking place, it simply means that now I'm going to be buying less with the dollars that I have, right? So then for us as consumers, we complain. We complain because this is bad. Now I cannot buy me 6 burgers, now I can only buy me 2 burgers. No, so that's the complaint. Now, when deflation takes place, the ones that complain is not the consumers. I mean, people like me and you, Cliff, we are happy because now with my dollar, I can buy a lot of things. See, but the one that they complain is the what? The producers. Because now with the money they're going to get, it's probably not enough to pay for the production cost of that item. So why should I make a product in which there's no profits involved? So then if there's no profits involved, I'm not going to make that. And then that creates a problem because in the economy, we have 2 major players. The 2 big players in the economy that makes the economy go round and round and round is what? Firms and households. It's 2 powers that they actually create, what's the word, like an energy for the thing to continue moving. So if one of them is not functioning, it goes pop, pop. Imagine a tire that in a quarter of a tire, there's no air, it will boom, and you will not be able to continue functioning. So that's exactly what will happen with the economy. So if deflation takes place, deflation, you are taking the air out of the tire. And I don't care how good of a tire you have. I mean, even you buy one of those run flat tires. You know, they are, for example, racing cars have run flat tires, which simply means that if the tire becomes flat, you can still run. But you cannot run indefinitely. You cannot finish a race. And you simply allow you to go what? Any of you have a fancy car that has a run flat tires? I mean, it simply means this. You have one of these cars that have a run flat tires, you are allowed to move at a speed of about 40 miles an hour up to 60 miles. So it simply means it just help you to go to the what? To the next gasoline station. So that will happen with the economy. So if the economy begins to deflate, the economy is possible to continue moving, but it's gonna have to move at a what? At a lower speed, right? And eventually gonna have to come to a stop. So what we're trying to do now, we're trying to put air in the tire as the car is moving. So imagine that you're running behind a car moving and trying to put the air, so it's very difficult. And that's exactly, you know, the explanation that I can use about this. So then deflation is bad. As a matter of fact, many people say that deflation is actually worse than inflation.
I guess one thing that I'm not really wrapping my head around is if prices of final goods fall, would not also the prices of raw materials and manufacturing costs fall with them?
Yes, yeah. But the prices of items fall, but they don't fall immediately. And let me explain this to you. For example, I am an airline fuel supplier. You're an airline company. You buy fuel from me. I provide the fuel for your jets, right? You don't come to me every day and say, okay, fill up my tank. I make a contract with you, say, I'm going to deliver fuel jet, for the next 7 months at this price. So you have a contract with me that you're gonna pay me, let's say $18 a gallon for jet fuel. I don't know what the price of jet fuel is, but let's say you're gonna pay me $18 a gallon for the price of jet fuel. So if deflation is taking place, you cannot come and say, hey, Hasso, I'm not making any money, I cannot pay you $18. And you simply say, but that's the contract that we have. 6 months from now, then we can what? Renegotiate that contract. So that's the problem. So then it is possible, like you say, that the price of everything will go down, and then the producer's price will also what? Will also come down, right? But the suppliers or these producers, they have contracts, and the suppliers are not going to be willing. They are not going to be willing to lower the price immediately. So, like they say, on the long run, the economy will self-adjust itself, but in the long run, everybody's going to be dead. That's all it means. That yeah, it's possible that the economy will adjust itself, and you're right, sir. The economy will adjust itself. Think about, for example, if overnight, boom, there's an explosion and there's no more gasoline in the planet. There's no gasoline, period. What are you laughing, Melody? What are you laughing? You begin to laugh and everybody begins to follow you.
I'm so sorry. I just thought it's really funny when you're like, oh my gosh. I don't know, this is so funny to me.
What is the funny? I mean, come on, Cliff, follow me. I mean, what is the funny thing?
I think it's because you're like, and then the long run, we're all dead. And then you're like, and then there's an explosion. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Sorry, I like your analogy.
By the way, what I'm telling you about that the economy will self-correct itself on the long run, this is not my phrase. This is John Maynard Keynes on his famous book, The Wealth of Nations, in which he's actually the father of modern economics or Keynesian economics, that simply say, on the long run, the economy will correct itself, but in the long run, everybody's dead. We cannot wait for people to die to find a solution. Okay, so I was coming back to this. So yes, okay, you can laugh again. Boom, there's an explosion, and there's no more fuels in the planet. Are we going to die because there's no more gasoline? No, we'll make adjustments, right? Some of us still have a little bit of gas in the cars, and they're going to try to save it. Say, I'm going to keep my car there. I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to use it in case of an emergency. Some people will walk to Walmart and buy a bicycle. Some Mexicans like me will go out and buy a donkey. We have now a mode of transportation. So eventually we will find a solution to all the problems. We'll find a solution to the problems, but at what price? At what price? Right? At what price? Now, let me give you an example of this or the issue of the deflation. In the 1930s, prices were beginning to come down. And according to classical economics, they simply say when prices come down, people will buy. Because there's only two things people can do with money. You can either save it or you consume it. So you're not consuming, then you are saving. So if people were not buying, right, inventories were beginning to accumulate and savings were beginning to increase. They say, okay, now the companies are going to start lowering the price, and then people are going to think this is a good buy, and they're going to go to withdraw their money, or some people are going to go to the bank and borrow money to be able to buy this product, and now they are at an excellent price, right? Prices begin to go down, and people were not buying. And prices went to go down, and people were not buying. Prices went up at production cost, and people were not buying. Prices went below production cost, and people were not buying because of the fear. Remember the famous phrase by one of our presidents? All we have to fear is fear itself. And that's exactly what happened. So that's exactly the same thing is repeating today. In 2020, 90 years later, is repeating. And our nation is going through the same situation of fear. We don't know what's going to happen, right? We don't know the uncertainty. And as a result of this, then we are being paralyzed. We are being paralyzed. So governments are trying to figure out how we can do it. So again, what solved the 1930 depression? A couple of things. Government intervened, government began to hire people, and then people in Europe begin to kill themselves. And then we saw an opportunity for us to build weapons, and companies begin to produce. And now we also begin to hire females to come and produce weapons for Europe, you know, and then we were involved in the war, and then we produce, and you know what happened. All the nations of the world in the 1940s, you know, were destroyed. The infrastructure was destroyed. Germany, France, Italy, England. I mean, all the Europe was touched by war. Japan, the only nation that was not damaged, the infrastructure, was the United States. And that's why after World War II, the United States became the king of the hill, because it was the only nation that had the infrastructure to produce. We were able to produce cars and airplanes and machinery because we were not bombed. And we became, you know, the chiefs of the Marshall Plan. Let's rebuild Europe, right? With our help, with our guide. And it happened just simply because we were safe, that we were geographically far away from where these planes can come and actually bomb us, right? Think about this. Now, that will not happen, right? Because we don't even need planes to go and destroy a nation, okay? So, but again, that's a totally different lecture. Okay, any other questions? Very good question, Cliff. Any other questions? Okay, so let's continue then with the class. So deflation, right, is actually, let me come back right here. I'm trying to figure out where do we stop. Okay, so a rise in the average price level is inflation, a decrease in the average price level is deflation. Now, the market can make some goods to go up in price and some goods to come down in price, but that's a market function, simply changes in supply and changes in demand. And again, a relative price is the price of one good compared to the price of another good. So what we do as consumers is, if the price of spaghetti is going up, well, we buy another product that we like. If the price of beef is too expensive, we buy chicken. If chicken is too expensive, guess what? We're gonna become vegetarians. You know, and that's the way people respond to relative prices. Okay, so effects of inflation. Now, what is some of the effects of inflation in individuals? Well, when inflation goes up, individuals' purchasing power is going to be impacted, because now I'm not going to be able to buy as much as before. So then if I cannot buy as much as before, then what am I going to do? Then when individuals begin to do, they become more careful on where they're going to allocate their buying power. In other words, we become more careful on the things that we buy. And we will buy those things that we believe are going to give us the most satisfaction per dollar spent. In other words, we try to avoid the high price items during times of inflation. Right? In some cases, we just simply don't buy any goods with higher prices, and then we just buy goods with lower prices. You know, we stop buying the brand name products and we go to the, you know, generic brand names. Okay, and again, so when inflation takes place, inflation impacts your real income. Your real income. What is your real income? Your real income is the income that you have after you adjusted for inflation. Your nominal income is the income that you get paid just in current dollars, okay? So the nominal income is the amount of money that you receive in a given time period. It's in current dollars. The real income is the income that is constant. No, it has been adjusted for inflation. I'll give you an example of what we mean by this, okay? So, look, this is what happened. You are working at a company and you get your paycheck. Let's say that in what year are we now? Okay, 2019, last year. In 2019, let's say you were making, and again, I'm just gonna make up numbers. You were a professional working for a big company. You were making $10,000 a month. Okay, so in 2019, you make $10,000 a month. So 10,000, that'll be $120,000 a year, right? So you're making $120,000 a year. Now, in 2020, your salary now is $130,000 a year. So by looking at this, you say, wow, I'm doing much better because I have a higher income. I went from 120 to 130. But during 2019 to 1920, inflation went up by 10%. So then the question is, are you better off or are you worse off? Are you better off or are you worse off as a result of this? But how much your income went up? Can you hear me? Your income went up by 10,000, right? Divided by 120. Somebody has a calculator? 10 divided by 120,000?
That's about 8% increase in the income.
Okay, your income went up by 8%. Your income went up by 8%. But what happened to your buying power? See, inflation went up by 10%. Your income only went by 8%, so your buying power actually is now 2% less. So then your real buying power has decreased by 2%. Does it make sense? So then we have to find what is real, right? Because inflation in many cases creates some problems. And inflation creates an illusion. It's called money illusion, that you think you are better off. And that's the problem with inflation. Look at this. You're getting paid $7.25 an hour, okay? Your grandpa was getting paid, well, let me use me, which probably I can be your grandpa. Shut up. Okay, so in 2020, the minimum wage is $7.25. When I was at Lee in 1981, I still have a paycheck that I have not cashed on my salary when I was working at Lee as a student worker. Okay, and the salary in 1981, if I'm not mistaken, was like $267. Okay, $267. So by looking at this, a college student in 2020 is making almost 3 times as much as I was making in 1981. So he's 3 times better. The question is he? Well, let me tell you this. In 1981, I was able to go to the movie theaters here in Cleveland. And on Tuesday nights at the Village Theater, you know, where the Jones businesses, where they check into cash, that little plaza right there. We used to have a movie theater there. We used to have a movie theater right there. And I remember that on Tuesday nights, you were able to go there for $1 entrance. And the admission was $1. So which means that in 1981, I was able to buy 2 tickets to go to the theater with 1 hour of work. With 1 hour of work, I was able to go to the theater and watch the movie and invite somebody with me. How much is the movie ticket today?
At the very cheapest, they'll have like a $5 deal.
The cheapest one is about $5. So as you can see, I cannot buy 2 tickets. I can only buy 2 tickets. Okay, so now on a regular tickets, that was Tuesday, on a regular tickets, I think it was about $250. So then I was able to go to watch a movie for about $250, 1 hour of work. Today is what, about $10. So as you can see, the money that I was making in 1981 was allowing me to buy more than what the money that you make allow you to buy today. So then these high salaries that you're making is only a money illusion. It's an illusion. It makes you feel wealthier. And that's the problem with inflation. That some people say, wow, I'm making a lot of money. Look, let me use another example. If you live in Cleveland and if you make $60,000 a year in Cleveland, you are doing good. You are doing good. In Cleveland, with $60,000 a year, you can have a decent house. You can have a decent house, right? With $60,000 in Seattle, Washington, you cannot even buy a mobile home, right? Because geographically speaking, in that area, things are very high in price. What is the average price of a house in Cleveland? I think it's $187,000. That's the average price of a 3-bedroom small starter house in Cleveland. A nice little house. What is the average price of a house, let's say in San Francisco or in Boston? The average price of a house in Boston is about $657,000, right? So as you can see, $60,000 will allow you to live here in Cleveland, but in Boston, you have to make, let's say, $180,000 to be able to have the same buying power. So when you're talking to somebody in Boston, say, oh yeah, I make $180,000, I make 3 times more than you. Yeah, you make 3 times more than me. Well, what can you buy? So then your real buying power is actually less than me because of the difference in inflation, geographically speaking. Okay, and that's the things that we are discussing, that inflation creates some problems. Okay, any questions? Okay, so then let's continue here with the impacts of inflation. One of the effects of inflation is that it actually makes a redistribution of income and wealth, which simply means that inflation makes some people income to go up and makes some people income to come down. Inflation makes some people's wealth to go up and some people actually become actually poor. So there's a redistribution effect. For example, if you own a building and inflation goes up, then that's going to make you better off because the price of that building is going to go higher. But if you are the buyer of that building, then it's going to make you worse off because now you're going to have to pay more to buy the building that somebody else was able to buy at a much lower price a few years ago. So inflation makes some people worse off and others better off. We have price effects, which simply means inflation impact changes prices. Inflation has income effects, it changes income, and inflation also changes wealth. Okay, let's talk about the price effects. For example, for you and for me, if we buy products for which the prices are going up, we're going to be worse off, right? Because now we have to pay more. But if you are the seller of products that they're going up as a result of inflation, then you are better off. Especially those products have already been made. In other words, they were made before. You're selling inventory. You're selling things that you have already produced at a lower production cost. Inflation goes up, and then you are better off. So then when inflation takes place, companies always benefit on the short run. On the short run, right? Because they can sell the products at a higher price and the cost of production is not changing. Eventually, the cost of production is going to change, because the suppliers are going to ask for more money, and then you have no other option but to increase the price of your item. But that will be in the long term. Now, if you are a buyer of products that they're increasing, at a lower rate, then you are better off. But if you are a seller of products that they're increasing at a lower rate, then you're worse off. So in other words, inflation impacts buyers and impact sellers. So it depends on which side of the equation you are. You can either be worse off or you can be better off. Inflation also impacts income, and we have an income effect. So then if your income increases at a higher rate than inflation, then you are better off. But if your income increases at a lower rate than inflation, then you're worse off. See, in the example that I just gave you, I was making 120,000, now you make 130,000, your income went up, right? But that was only a nominal increase in income of 8%. Well, because inflation went up by 10%, then in that situation, that individual, which the example was me, then I will be worse off because my income went or increased at a rate lower than inflation. Inflation also has an impact on wealth, right? If you own an asset that is declining in value, you're going to be worse off. But if you own an asset that is increasing in value, then you are better off. Think about, for example, what is going to be the impact on the value of homes as a result of this coronavirus. What do you think is going to be the value of houses? You think the value of houses is going to appreciate or is it going to depreciate? Anybody?
I think it would probably,
Sorry.
Go ahead, Zach.
I think it would probably go up just because people are spending more time in their house. They may want larger houses. And so then the price of the houses will go up potentially.
Okay. Ashley, what were you going to say?
I said depreciate
Why?
because no one's buying houses right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Anybody else?
I know. Are you talking about currently or in the future?
Currently.
Because I know right now is a really good time to sell. Like the value is really high, but I don't know how that will change in the future. If those, I'm sure eventually it will drop back down, depreciate.
Yeah. Well, actually, the prices of houses have been going up. So it was a good time to sell your house. However, for the last 8 weeks, nobody's buying houses. Nobody's buying houses. So this is a very bad time for you to sell your house. Nobody's going to come and look at your house. People are not there looking for houses to buy, right? So, for example, my neighbor, right here, next door, literally next door, they put their house in the market because the wife, which is, you know, the breadwinner, had another job in Nashville, Tennessee. She was the director of human resources at M&M Mars here in Cleveland, and now she moved to Nashville. I don't know what company, but she moved to Nashville. So now she's putting her house in the market. Now, what is the probability that somebody's going to come and buy her house? And I think that is very, very, very small, right? Because at this point, people are not buying houses because they are losing their jobs. And I think about the people that are actually losing their jobs, and they're not able to now to pay the mortgages. The banks are giving people help. They're going to give them help. In other words, you're going to pay your mortgage, you're okay, I'm not going to evict you. But the help, according to the government guidelines, is for 3 months. So it's almost 3 months. So if in 3 months from now you don't catch up with your bills, the bank has the power to repossess your house. So then when the bank repossesses your house, is the bank going to go into the rental business? No. The bank is going to try to dump the house as much as possible, as fast as possible. And the way you can get rid of a house that you have in inventory, I'm talking about banks, they do an auction. So in an auction, houses tend to what? To sell at a lower price. So then when the house is sold at a lower price, that's going to impact not only the price of the house, but the price of all the other people around that. Because the price of houses is determined by this average selling price of the houses in that neighborhood. So if a house in my neighborhood begin to sell at a half the price than before, guess what? My house is going to go at a lower price than before. So that's what inflation does. Inflation makes some people worse off and some people better off, right? So you own something that goes up in value, you're good, right? But if inflation impact the income of people and people don't have money to buy the house, then that's going to create a problem for the value of your house, okay? So we talk about the impacts of inflation. So inflation impact the wealth. See, another problem of inflation is that it creates a money illusion, and I already explained to you that, right? That you begin to look at the numbers, right? In reality, instead of the actual buying power of those numbers. The same example that I gave you, in the good old days, a movie ticket was 50 cents. The minimum wage was $1. See, compared today, you know, which is $7.25, you cannot go to the movie theaters with 1 hour of work, right? So the inflation rate in 1980, for example, was 13.5. In 1979, your income was 10,000, now is 11,000. Are you better off or worse off in 1980?
You're worse off
Why, sir?
because your income only went up 10%, but the price of everything went up 13.5%.
Exactly. So then what happened is that your real buying power actually decreased. You're worse off because inflation went up by a higher rate than your nominal income. See, your income went up by 10%, while prices went up by 13%. So then, in addition to impacting the lives of individuals like me and you, what is the impact of inflation at the macro level? At the macro level, okay. So this is the consequences of inflation at the macro level. At the macro level, inflation creates uncertainty. It creates uncertainty. Are you there, guys? Okay, so at the macro level, inflation creates uncertainty. In other words, companies don't know what's going to happen. So then companies begin to make decisions, and in some cases, with the information that they have, they probably do not make the best decision. Think about, for example, a company that makes bread, and they buy tons of wheat to make bread, and inflation is going up. Would you advise the company to go ahead and buy all the wheat that they need now, or to go ahead and make a long-term contract with the supplier? So some companies go ahead and make long-term contracts with the supplier. Think about airline companies that buy fuel jet, right? So they go ahead and make long contracts with the suppliers. So there's a lot of uncertainty, so you don't know what to do. So then when inflation begins to take place, and because we have uncertainty, then people begin to speculate. So instead of making the things that they do, they begin to try to figure out ways in which they can make some money as a result of the inflation. Let me give you an example. A company is manufacturing widgets, and the company is profitable, and inflation is going up. And then the owner of the company said, wow, instead of making more widgets, I'm going to use my profits, and I'm going to buy this building, this mall, because I believe I'm going to make more money next year. I'll be able to sell the building at a higher price. Are you going to be right? I don't know. You're speculating. And that's exactly what companies do. Think about, for example, companies that begin to buy other companies, and then later on they wake up and realize that, oh my God, I'm in hot water. For example, AT&T. What's AT&T? It's a company that specializes in what? On communications, right? AT&T provides cell services, home services, what's called internet services provider, and they also provide telephone services, right? And I think they're going to go into video production. But AT&T also owns DirecTV, satellite TV. So when things were going crazy, AT&T decided to go buy another company that was related to their industry. But now that things are going bad, people are discontinuing satellite services. Because think about this, who buys satellite services? The satellite services are usually people that live outside the city, that have no choice, right? They are people that live in most cases, they are low-income people. In most cases, low-value homes. These are the people affected by the coronavirus. So these people have lost their jobs. So the first thing they let go is their satellite services. So now the company is losing customers like crazy, in the millions, in the millions. The company purchased that company at billions of dollars, multi-billion dollars. That's how much they pay for this company. And now I'm talking about this week. The company is now thinking about how are we going to adopt this company? How are we going to sell it? But the question is, who's going to buy it? We don't know who's going to buy it. Probably nobody. Probably Dish Network would be about the only one. So they can absorb the competition. But all that happened as a result of a speculation. The company began to speculate on something else. Another negative thing of inflation is that inflation moves individual to a bracket creep. Now, what is a bracket creep? This is what it means. Look, you're making, let's say, let's go with the example that we were discussing. You're making $10,000 a year. Then your income goes up to $11,000. So now you had a salary increase of 10%. Now inflation, let's say inflation is only 9%. Okay, so your income went up by 10%, inflation went up by only what? 9%. Are you better off or worse off? You are better off, right? But because your income now goes into a higher income bracket, in the United States, we have a progressive tax systems, you pay higher taxes. So now when your income went from 10% to 11%, your taxes are going to go by 3%. See, your taxes are going to go by 3%. So now you're going to lose the inflation, the 9%, and now you have to pay 3% more. Why? Because the nominal income moved you into a higher income tax bracket, and instead of you being better, now you're actually worse off. Because you have to pay taxes on all your income at a higher tax bracket, or pay more taxes in the new income that you're receiving, and instead of you being better off, it's actually worse off. For example, many individuals, when they talk to companies, they'll prefer to have benefits instead of salary increases. Because look, if I'm working for Lee, and Lee decide to give me a 3% pay raise. Let me see, let's go with numbers. I'm gonna go with real numbers around what Lee pays. Let's say Lee pays about, $60,000 to a professor. So 3% of that will be how much? 6 times 3, $1,800? Is that what you say, sir? Okay, $1,800. So Lee will increase my salary by $1,800, a little bit more than $120 a month. Okay? But because my income went up by $1,800, I'm gonna have to pay taxes on that. Let's say 10% of that. So then in reality, my increase in paycheck is only $100 a month, right? Because I had to pay taxes, so I'll only make $25 a week more. Well, how about if Lee University, instead of giving me a $1,800 a year salary increase, Lee University comes to me and say, hey, we're gonna open a daycare center and you can bring your child for free. Or you can bring your child at a very high subsidized, cost. So in other words, I'm only gonna pay $200 a month to have my child at ELC, at the learning center, versus the $800 that I was paying before. See, look, this is the example. Few years ago, my girls are now 9 and 10, but few years ago, I had a nanny to come and take care of my girls because my wife work, I work. So we have a young girl that used to come into the house, and we're paying this young girl $400 a week. $400 a week. I mean, it's an all-day job, from 8 to 5. So, but we were paying her $10 an hour. $10 an hour, 40 hours is $400 a week. So $1,600. So to me, it was a lot of money to pay this young girl, $1,600 every month. Now, when Lee decided to open the learning center, now we can bring your child to the school, and the cost was only $250. So as you can see, when I move my kids to the learning center, my salary has dramatically increased because now I don't have to pay $1,400. Now I only have to pay $250. So then I had, in my mind, I had a pay raise of $1,150 every month. Was that actually a pay raise? Well, that's not a pay raise. With my buying power, my disposable income, my discretionary income increased by $1,150. So I'm much better off, right? I'm much better off. So inflation creates situations in which instead of making people better off, it actually makes people actually worse off, okay? So guys, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Share my screen. And we're going to go now to the consequences of inflation. So I already told you that inflation creates uncertainty. Inflation forces some companies to be engaged in speculation. Some companies begin to do things for which they are not really good at it. They begin to buy raw materials. They begin to produce things that they think they're going to be able to make some money in the future. And that's a speculation. Another problem of inflation at the macro level is that it creates a bracket creep. It simply moves you into higher tax bracket, and instead of you being better off, you're going to be worse off. Now, the worst thing that can happen in inflation is if inflation becomes hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is when inflation rate exceeds or grows more than 200% for, and lasts for 1 year. In other words, an increase in inflation of 200% for more than 1 year. And this is when the economies can be totally collapse. Because if you really think about it, it means that everything that you can think will double in price in less than 1 year, right? And that's hyperinflation, inflation totally out of control, okay? Now, the issue of deflation we were discussing is a general decrease in the prices. And this deflation also has a redistribution effect. Think about this, people that actually, think about people that have invested in the stock market as we speak today. The price of everything is coming down, and a lot of people have lost a lot of money. A lot of people's portfolio have actually decreased in value, right? And some people cannot deal with these movements on the stock market because of the uncertainty. Are we going to go up? Are we going to go down? And some people just simply leave the market. So if people leave the market, they sell their assets. And when everybody's selling their assets, then the price of those assets are actually coming down. So deflation has a redistribution effect, that in some cases, people are simply lose what it is valuable, what they think they have, right? And again, this is the macro consequences. Another problem of deflation is that sellers don't want to produce because they say, why am I going to produce if nobody's going to buy my product, or if they want to buy it, they want to buy it at a lower price. So then they become to reduce the inventories. And then individuals begin to behave the other way around, because when deflation goes up, individuals say, if I wait till next month, things are going to be even cheaper, right? So again, people are not buying even when deflation is taking place, because people begin to get an idea that prices are going to be lower next month. And because deflation is taking place, then companies simply do not expand. They don't buy new machinery, they don't buy new technology, they don't hire new people simply because they are not making any money. So deflation is just as bad as inflation. Income falls, assets, values decreases. And so then how do we measure inflation? How do we measure inflation? And you already know that. We discussed that in last chapter. The way we measure inflation is by looking at the changing prices of certain things. The index that everybody knows is called the consumer price index, right? And this measures the changing prices of a basket of goods. We already discussed that in class, right? Was the last chapter or the chapter before?
I'm pretty sure it was yesterday.
It was yesterday, okay. So this is the consumer price index. So again, the consumer price index gives you an idea about, in percentage terms, how much the price of things are going up, and that's the inflation rate, right? Again, the consumer price index is a market basket of goods, and we buy them, and then we buy them again, and then we see the difference. So inflation is always have to be compared against a base year. That's the reference, and that's what we discussed yesterday. So the base year is always 100. In other words, things cost me $1, so that's the base year is 100. If today things cost me 10% more, then the second year the index is 120. In other words, simply means it takes you 20 cents more to buy the things that you were buying before. Okay. So again, we don't have to go over this because, well, I think we discussed this. If in year one it costs you $1,200 to buy something, then the next year it costs you $1,320 to buy something, then we look at the difference. So it went up by 12 to 13.2. So it went by 1,200. 1,200 divided by 12,000 equals to 1.10. So as you can see, inflation now in the second year has gone up by 10%. And again, that's the way we measure inflation. Just look at the difference and compare to the base year. Okay.
Dr. Hasso?
Yes.
I think it was the last slide, but I missed. What is basket price? Is that just, what does that mean?
Okay, the basket price. Let me use my screen right here. The CPI is an index that we have created that measures the price of a basket of goods. Now, there are actually 400 products that a typical urban household buys. Actually, the real name is called the CPI. It's the Urban Consumer Price Index. In other words, people that live in the city, what are the typical products that they buy every month? Will be what? Chicken, what? Ground meat, milk, chocolate milk, cereal, cell services, cable services. So there are 400 products, boom, 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 boom. And we buy those 400 products and say, okay, how much you spend to buy those 400 products? $1,000. Then the next year we go and buy the same basket of goods. That's it. The basket of goods is the same basket, the same products. And then if the following year you spend $100, as you can see now things cost $200 more than before. So it'll be $200 more than before. This is the base year, was 1,000. So it'll be now 200 divided by, for some reason, I hate when my computer just freezes. Hold on. Okay, so it will be 200 divided by 1,000, and that will be a what? A 20% increase. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Okay, hold on. My computer just froze on me, so let me turn off this computer and continue with my mainframe. Come on, bro. Okay, there it goes. Okay. So the way we compute prices is just by looking at the difference in prices from one time period to another time period. If we use the consumer price index, it simply means we use the same basket of goods. There are other indexes. That we use to measure inflation. Okay, for example, we have the core inflation index. On the core inflation index, we use the CPI, but we do not add, by the way, you don't have to know this for the exam. On the core inflation index, we use the CPI, but we exclude food and energy prices, because food and energy prices are very volatile. They move too fast. So then we look at the other items, and that will give me a core index of inflation. In other words, with the exception of food and gasoline, what happened to prices? That's the core inflation index. Then we have another called the PPI, is the producer's price index. We just look at the changing prices of raw materials that producers use, intermediate factors of production. We use, for example, raw lumber, raw oil, intermediate products that we use. Okay, and again, that's the producer price index. What happened to the price of producing certain items. The most accurate measurement of inflation, and this is what the government uses, is the GDP deflator. And the GDP deflator is an index that actually measures the changing price of all products produced in the economy. That's the GDP deflator. Don't ask me how the government does that. I have no idea. But the government collects information on the change in prices of everything. I'm talking about everything, right? And then based on that, they find out about how much prices have gone up. Okay, again, we don't have to do this. We already work it. So then what is the goal of the government? Well, the goal of the government is to try to create some price stability. In other words, we don't want prices to go up and down. And the reason why we don't want prices to go up and down is because some people are affected, impacted. Think about, for example, people living in fixed income. If your income is fixed, it doesn't change, and the price of everything is going up, you say you have inflation, then as inflation takes place, you're going to be worse off and worse off and worse off and worse off, right? So we don't want prices to go out of control. So then the United States government in 1978 established the Full Employment and Balanced Growth Act of 1978, which simply means the Congress of the United States took upon itself, right, to be involved in trying to keep the economy, at certain levels. And this is the levels. We want to keep inflation at less than 3%. And we want the economy to expand at more than 3%. That's the goal. That does not mean that we're going to accomplish. And the Congress intervene in the economy by doing fiscal policy to try to achieve these goals. We want to keep inflation at less than 3%. And we have been very, very, very successful in the United States. We have been able to keep inflation at less than 3%, for many, many, many years. Okay. So the concerns that we have is that in many cases, for example, the way we measure inflation is that in many cases, the price of things go up. But do the price of things go up because of inflation, or the price of things go up because of the quality improvements in that basket of goods? So then we'll see the price of automobiles double in price. Does the price of automobiles went up in price because of inflation, or simply because the quality of the product now is 2 times better? Right? Another problem with the way that we measure inflation, especially if we use the CPI, is that it don't take into consideration what is called the substitution bias, which simply means in the basket of goods, for example, we have butter. If the price of butter goes up, that's going to be counted as inflation because it's in the index. But what do people do when the price of butter goes up? Okay, guys, you like butter? If the price of butter goes up, what do?
See if there's any other kind of butter that's not.
Okay, so forget about butter. I'm going to buy margarine. Okay, butter is made out of what?
Milk.
Milk. Margarine is made out of
Oil?
vegetable oil. Okay, so this is the way we behave. Butter is too high. Forget about butter. I'm going to buy margarine. And if margarine is too high, what am I going to buy?
Butter.
No, I want to buy, I cannot believe it's not butter. No, the spread, the one that you can get a bucket, 5 gallons of I cannot believe it's not butter. Well, guess what? It's not butter. And you can buy that for about $1.25. You can buy literally 5 gallons of I cannot believe it's butter for $1.25. Yeah, because it's not butter. Butter is made with what? Milk. Margarine is made with vegetable oil. And I cannot believe it's butter. You know it as spread. You know the thing that you buy, the spread that you put, what it's made of. You don't even know what you eat, right? I bet you have a little can of spread in your refrigerator. It's made of animal fat. Now think about that for a second. So then the way we measure inflation, in many cases, it doesn't take the substitution bias. Now, I don't care if the price of butter is going up. I'm not going to buy it. I don't care if the price of milk going up. I don't even have kids. I don't need milk. I don't care if the price of meat go up. I don't care. I'm a vegetarian. Does that make sense? So just because the price of those 400 products are going up, and we say inflation is impacting the economy, most people say, I don't need those products. I don't even buy eggs. I have my own chickens in the back of my house. You know. So again, this is the problem with the way we measure inflation. So it's just I guess what's it called? We use it just to give us an idea about what's going on. Another problem with the way we measure inflation is that it does not take into consideration. It does not take into consideration new products. No, it doesn't take into consideration new products. Okay. So as a result of this, then in the basket of goods, you say, okay, this is what happened to the price of these items. So what? I'm not buying those products. I'm buying now iPads and I'm buying smartphones. You know, and probably that is not in the what? In the index. Okay. Again, this is the historical record of inflation in the United States. And as you can see, with the exception of 1970, 1920, inflation went about 19%. And then we were able to keep it under control. And then during World War II, inflation went up. Then we went to keep it down. Then this is 1977, 1979. This is the Iranian crisis, in which Iran decided not to sell oil to us. The price of oil doubled. I remember this. I was a student in 1979 when I came to live. The price of gasoline in 1979 was $4.57 a gallon. $4.57 a gallon. In today's term, that will be about $12.80 a gallon, right? Because there was no gasoline. You know what happened in the Middle East. So inflation went up because gasoline is used to make a lot of other products, and then we were able to come and put it down. And then we have the recession of 2008, the housing crisis, and things actually went down and deflation went down. So on the average, on the average, you add all these numbers, we have been able to keep inflation at less than 3%, for those numbers of years. So now the question is, okay, what is the causes of inflation? What makes inflation? There are two main things that causes inflation. Number one is called demand pull, and the other one is called cost push. Demand pull is inflation takes place because everybody's buying. It results from excessive pressure to buy on the demand side of the economy. So when the economy is doing good and everybody has money, everybody's buying, boom, buying. And that was happened to the United States, all the way to spring break. Remember, we have a very low level of unemployment 2 months ago, 3.9. People have a lot of money and people were buying like crazy. And when people were buying like crazy, the price of everything was going up. So that's demand pull inflation. The other type of inflation is called cost push inflation. This is when the producer passes the higher cost of production to the seller. So producers are making a product, the cost of raw material goes up, and they just increase the price for them to be able to continue in business. So these are the two main sources of inflation, because everybody's buying, or because the producers are producing less, right? Or they are just increasing prices to be able to continue producing at the same level. And that's called cost push inflation. So what can we do if we have inflation? Well, the government in many cases creates what's called a cost of living allowance. A cost of living allowance simply means that automatically the government increases the salaries by the amount of inflation. For example, Lee University has that. It has a COLA allowance in our salary. If inflation goes up by 1%, Lee increases our salary by 1%. So we try to keep our real buying power at the same level. Okay. What other people do is, in case of inflation, banks don't want to lend you money at fixed rates. Bank would prefer to lend you money at adjustable rates. So in other words, they lend you money to buy a house at 5%, and inflation goes up, they charge higher interest rates the following year. See, by the way, adjustable rate mortgage benefits the seller, it benefits the lender. It doesn't benefit the buyer, because when you buy something with an adjustable rate, you expose yourself that if inflation goes up, your interest rates are going to go up. Okay, so we discussed real interest rates, and this is the end of the chapter, guys. This is the end of the chapter. Okay, so